listening to the EdTech podcast live at BETT. Over the course of the day, we're sitting down with people from across education and technology, sharing stories, insights and perspectives from one of the biggest moments in the global EdTech calendar. Hello and welcome, Kerry, to the EdTech podcast. It's very exciting to have you here. Please, would you be able to tell the international audience and listeners a little bit about yourself and where you're from?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me here. I'm Kerry Weston and I work at the BRIT School, which is in Selhurst in Croydon in South London. It's a school that's widely known for its arts, and particularly probably its music and its most notable alumni. I oversee teaching and learning at the school, and I wedged in digital innovation as well, because actually that's where my passion is. So not at odds with an art school, actually enables a very kind of innovative working life.
That's amazing. And I love the fact that you've wedged it in, because actually part and parcel of teaching and learning is EdTech. So tell us a little bit about that innovation and things that you are doing at the BRIT School. What's something really fun that's been happening?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we use Google Workspace for Education. We've embedded it and use it as our learning management system and have done for a long time. That being said, we use lots of other programs and resources. We have highly specialist vocational courses and qualifications there that need industry standards, software and learning tools. So we're a whole array of wonderful software that allows for lovely learning experiences for our young people to prepare them for a career in the arts and a really successful one. So we try to mirror industry where we possibly can, from working processes and organization and file management and stuff like that, right the way through to really specialist software and equipment and technology for specific arts industries.
That's amazing. And so we are here obviously at BETT live. And what sorts of things are you looking out for? Who are you looking to listen to?
I think probably like everyone else here, I'm looking for thoughts around artificial intelligence. I've just listened to a really wonderful talk with Hannah Fry, who articulated brilliantly what the future might hold for our young people. And I have to say, I think what the BRIT School does probably will enable that learning and space for students to understand it and hopefully become innovators in that field as well. So where I think arts and AI can collide in an ethical way, I think we could have some really wonderful things happen over the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess in some respects, because of the innovative nature of the BRIT School and the way in which it's very, as you say, very linked to industry, you must have some incredibly passionate staff there as well who are able to facilitate that. Is that kind of the case of everyone's kind of very kind of on the ball and trying to really be, forward thinking in their digital use?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some amazing teachers who are fully on board with experiential learning and want to create very multi-sensory kind of learning spaces and experiences for young people. And we're very, very lucky in our kind of post-16 model that it's all very project-based learning. And we choose qualifications that allow as much autonomy as humanly possible for the teachers to use their expertise and explore and innovate with young people and learn alongside. So you end up with a kind of curriculum that is, if you want it to, can be absolutely kind of mind-blowing in a way. And with some really, really brilliant projects that come out. We've done quite a lot of work on insets in kind of student 2.0 and, teacher 2.0 and what that looks like and what that means and how we can get there and really move the kind of, what if questions to how do we do it? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think so one of the questions that kind of is popping into my mind right now as well is that the fear, I guess, in terms of artificial intelligence in such a creative space where we're seeing so many things being generated and auto-generated and created for us. How's the feeling of that? Like kind of, I'm very passionate around, humanization and really bringing that to the forefront. How is that looking at BRIT School?
I think the fear is very real, actually. It's real amongst staff and it's real amongst students. A lot of the kind of partners we work with externally are also questioning, the impact on the creator and what that's going to look like and how it will impact those industries. I think in my role, part of my role is to drive curiosity. It's to find out what it is and it's to find out how you can use it in a way that is going to help you as an artist and not take something away. I mean, artificial intelligence is wonderful. it can do amazing things. Its potential is very real, but it's not a human. And art is about human connection. So I think you can't ever take that away. For me, that will never be lost, and it can't be lost. But can you use artificial intelligence to help kind of your work processes and your workflows, and use it as a really incredible tool for ideation and realization? Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really keen to explore vibe coding with students, because our students have amazing ideas and they can realize those ideas, and they don't know that yet. So I think there is huge possibility in the arts sphere for artificial intelligence. I think it quite rightly has to be done with caution. And I think our students are quite right to question it, and staff really quite right to question it and find where it fits for them. But I think if you're curious about it, you'll learn about it, and then you can make that really informed choice about if or how you want to use it.
That's incredible. I think it's such great advice for so many educators listening as well, of that kind of really balanced approach of, I mean, ultimately, we say it's not going anywhere, is it? And so having that awareness, but building it into what is possible and how can that enable, as opposed to potentially put barriers in the way, is absolutely fantastic. So a little question in terms of, apart from maybe Google and AI, what else are you hoping to maybe see here? What are you kind of looking to be inspired by?
I'm looking to be inspired by what other teachers are doing, how other teachers are using things, real kind of life use cases that I can take back and go, look at what this school is doing. Always, develop our professional learning network. There's so much to learn from other people. People are doing amazing things. And this is a real kind of hub of people who are really passionate about education and innovation within education, and the bigger stories of how it fits into society and how it's going to shape society. And I think just to grow a network of people that are on the same page with that and want to explore those themes and concepts and make education really relevant for young people. And really relevant for, contemporary workspace. None of us know what it's going to be in 10 years. I think it's going to be wildly different. So how can we all come together to make it a safe and relevant experience for young people so that they can really thrive in a very rapidly changing world?
That is incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and the insights, especially into such an incredible school, which, as you say, has an amazing array of talent that comes from it. And so it's really nice to hear from the people that are nurturing that. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
BETT 2026 Personalised Learning matters because every learner is different. That's why Everway is built around a simple principle: learn your way. Everway provides digital tools that support personalised learning with consistent access across iPad, Chromebooks, and Windows devices, helping students learn in ways that work for them. These are trusted tools shown to improve student reading, writing, and understanding by up to 88%. And in exams, Everway helps students feel more confident and independent, while supporting schools to reduce the cost of access arrangements by 60 to 90%. It's practical support for learners and meaningful impact for educators. If you're at BETT 2026, visit the Everway team at stand SK41 to learn more. Everway, learn your way. So we are here today, day one, live at BETT 2026, and I have Joanna Gibbs here with me. Would you like to tell everyone a little bit about you?
Yes, hi. Yeah, thanks, Wilbur. My name's Joanna. I'm the director and founder and CEO of a company called SENsational Tutors. I established the company 9 years ago. I'm a qualified teacher, kind of fell into education. I worked for the NHS as a challenging behaviour to health support worker in the community, working amongst schools and amongst family homes, trying to make sure that the strategies between home and school were consistent. For example, the speech and language therapy strategies and the OT strategies. They never were, so I was trying to make sure that the children that I was supporting were really receiving the support that they deserved, and it was consistent. From that experience working in the NHS, I just developed a real love of want to change the world. Essentially, that was it. At the age of 21, I moved to India, worked in a slum school in northern India, under the mountains there, and I came back a little bit disheartened, to be fair, because I couldn't change the world. I couldn't take the people off the streets, obviously, and I fell into education that way because I had the experience of working in a slum school I had the experience of working in education over there. When I came back to England, I attended an interview at the American School of London, which was absolutely incredible. And that was I was successful in the interview based on my experience over in India and just based on my morals and my values of wanting to make a difference. So I was a teaching intern, absolutely brilliant school, really, really positive experience, incredible pastoral support. From that experience, I attended a job fair, an international job fair. So I was a founding member of a school in South Korea. This is when I was not qualified as a teacher. So I was a founding member of a school in South Korea. Again, based on just my vision to enforce change and to create curriculums and environments that really supported children. At that point, I was trained in the International Baccalaureate. So flown all over Asia, attending conferences. Japan was a popular one. So that was my first experience of really what education could look like. I absolutely love the IB. I feel now that I was incredibly lucky to have that experience because that's what I thought, that's what felt right for me when it came to teaching children, very much student-led, engaging, based on topics. An example I always give is, I was grade 1 and grade 2 teacher. Example I always give is, for a term we were teaching the rainforest. That was the topic. So of course, as you can imagine, you can be teaching all sorts of subjects through the rainforest, geography, looking at the map. I mean, these are little ones. Counting, people, looking at animals.
Diversity,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of my favourite things was persuasive writing. I got all the little ones to write, say the rainforest and their reasons why. And then we made, so we basically petitioned and walked around the school with little placards saying, save the rainforest. It's all that sort of stuff. And it was interesting because at that moment as well, again, not being qualified and just literally, I say I make it up as I go along, but I kind of did, was leading a classroom based on what I felt was right for the children and based on their enjoyment and love of learning. And I was able to there was no red tape. I was able to have that authority. One other memory I have of that experience is I set homework. Homework was a thing. Not that I truly believe in homework, but homework was a thing. And based on the topic of the rainforest, I set the homework and I said, okay, demonstrate your understanding of the homework. Of the rainforest. That is your homework. And I gave them, absolutely free rein as to how they can demonstrate their understanding. It's not like in the UK system, here's a pen and paper, you need to write an essay. Do what you want. I thought that, everybody would come back and they'd make a little puppet show or something really creative. But lo and behold, half of the classroom came back and had written an essay, which for me as a creative person was definitely not something I was going to be doing. And yes, other people made things out of shoe boxes and demonstrated it. But what I really wanted to come across with the children is, I don't need you to demonstrate your understanding of X in a certain way. I just need you to demonstrate your understanding of what I've taught you. Yeah. And that, even now, being a director of a company and understanding the national curriculum and seeing the UK curriculum currently in the same place as it was many, many years ago. So after my stint in South Korea, I did my master's degree in inclusion. Then I moved to Australia, basically fell in love with an Aussie, moved over to Australia. Then I finished my master's there, fell out of love with the Aussie, moved to Indonesia. Netherlands International School. I've got a Dutch heritage, hence my kind of visionary thinking. And different opinion when it comes to education. And then when I was in the Netherlands International School, I did my PGCE overseas and then came back to UK, did my QTS. So I did my QTS as an assessment only route. So I just had to compile a load of evidence, gained my QTS that way and worked in a mainstream school here in England. And I didn't fit the mold, essentially. And I was really upset because there was no feedback. But the feeling that I had, and eventually, in the end, I did get some feedback. And the feedback was, Joanna, you can't be moulded. Exactly. And at that point, I was like, right, what do I do now? I'm teaching on a one-to-one basis, as a private tutor, alongside working in a school in London, fully booked. And that was amazing. And I remember a point where I was looking at the teachers in the school I was working at, and I just felt that they didn't believe in their young people. They didn't see their children in the classroom as individuals. They're regurgitating the curriculum from last year. It was July. The conversation in the staffing was, have a good holiday. What are you going to do during the holiday? Nobody said, I'm going to reevaluate the curriculum.
Is it these are quite fundamental things. My husband's not an educator. We always say people become teachers and then they have these massive holidays, they don't do anything and then immerse themselves massively back to it.
Yeah.
But interestingly, you were just talking about how, you have this freedom within, especially the baccalaureate, where you kind of talk to the children about how do they want to express themselves in a similar way to the way that you clearly quite like to be able to do things as well. And then actually the rigor of the British curriculum really stops that. And you mentioned just a moment ago about being able to understand each child and really have that personalized development, which actually is, if you don't have that expression and that ability to say, tell me how you've learned that, tell me how you understand that, you don't have the opportunity to go, I don't think they've understood that.
Absolutely.
Because you're not going back, are you?
That's exactly right. But I also think there's an element of, we become teachers because we want to make a difference. And I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
There's not that many people that are signing up to become teachers, obviously, nowadays. But I think as a teacher, you're really missing something if you don't get to understand your child. You don't get that sense of reward of going, oh my gosh, they got it, they understood it. They demonstrated in this.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know you were so passionate about that. And I would allow you to understand that child a little bit more than just a little out of paper.
Yeah, exactly. And that personalisation is really, really, really important. And it's fascinating because obviously, there's a new white sandpaper that is coming through. And the conversation with the DfE is all about inclusion, but understanding. To me, that is so obvious. Get down to a young person's level and understand them and listen. Yeah. That's all it is. Listen and get that sense of reward from listening acutely to that young person.
Yeah, and that's incredible. So you've mentioned the sandpaper. How is that affecting what you're able to do within your work now?
So it hasn't come out yet. Early 2026.
Okay. It's on its way.
On its way. Massive sense of anxiety. I was speaking to, so essentially as a company, we work with local authorities, with families and with schools. Had a very long meeting with a local authority yesterday and we're very much on the same wavelength. But there's this massive sense of anxiety. There's a massive sense of, not being able to move forward or make decisions because we don't know what this white paper is about. We're talking about courses that we could be on to learn about X, Y, and Z. And she said, well, there's no point at the moment because it's going to change. So we're not progressing and we're not able to think forward with sweet standstill, but also with a sense of anxiety. And that's, even talking about it. Yeah, that not knowing.
Yeah.
I can't move the company forward, or I can't say to my tutors, you need to be doing X, Y, and Z. Because I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Not only that, is every local authority works differently, which makes it quite challenging. So part of the conversation yesterday is creating a platform for local authorities and environments, maybe a weekend away, where local authorities can come and speak, together and share their anxiety and problem solve together. Coming back to this sense of community and just problem solving again.
Yeah, and sharing best practices and things that they maybe have encountered before. The way it's sounding is a little bit like, have you ever had that email of like, come and see me at my office? Or we're holding a meeting, no agenda. And everyone's a bit like, what is this? Yeah. That kind of unbeknownst to us, what is going to happen? What are we going to be asked? It could be amazing. It could be really empowering. But the not knowing and that sense of disproportionate, like knocking you off your well-being.
Absolutely. But you've also got to think about the families involved in this. Is there support or provision going to be absolutely ripped to shreds, and the young person, autistic, non-speaking, non-verbal person isn't going to receive the support anymore? We just don't know.
And for some of those families who maybe have just found out diagnosis or maybe just come into kind of being really be able to leverage that support, that's going to be really detrimental as well.
Yeah, definitely. And the big thing is the EHCPs. Are they going to exist? Are they going to exist in the same way? We don't know. The belief is, and it is pretty much been confirmed, is that a lot of the responsibility is going to be given back to schools, which sounds, well, again, what does that look like?
Yeah.
There's budgets that are in place. What do they do with the budgets? I'm speaking to this local authority contact yesterday, and she, talking about the schools and their feedback. It's not that they need the budget, but they need the space and the capacity and the time to be able to utilise some of these budgets. They've got the resources, so they say. Training, possibly. I still think there's a place here for further teacher training. Myself being a qualified teacher, all the strategies I utilise, the speech and language therapy strategies and the OT strategies, that's when I was working for NHS when I was 20. The qualified teacher was not trained in any SEN strategy.
And there's such a small window of of hours that we're allowed to kind of offer for teachers, because obviously restrictions in terms of how long people are working, what their capacity is, not wanting to overwhelm them. But then on the flip side of that, if they don't know and don't have the opportunity to train, it almost makes it worse on the other side of that. And if it goes down to school level, it becomes the priority of the school, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the school will still be ultimately responsible to meet need. That is the question. Can the school meet need? There are always going to be those more complex young people who cannot attend school, or there isn't a school place available. That's how normally as a company we get involved to meet those much more complex needs. But at the lower level, dyslexia or dyslexia, those diagnoses are going to be supported in the classroom, which I think is a good idea, but it does mean that there needs to be a shift in the teacher's just ability to want to understand, or the capacity. Do fundamentally believe, and I want to believe that teachers get into the profession because they want to create change and make a difference and actually teach. But there needs to be the space to be able to actually do that. And as we said before, get down to that young person's level and understand them, listen to them.
And I think it was really lovely at the beginning. You were so clearly very passionate about education and your mission and driven towards what you're doing. So tell us a little bit about SENsational Tutors.
Yeah, SENsational Tutors. So that really came from me having been a private tutor. I was teaching dyslexic children at the time that I was working at the school in London. It was very much looking at the teachers around me and looking at the young people and just thinking, I know who you are, I know what you're about. Unfortunately, this curriculum does not allow me to get you to the place where I know you can get to on with the one-to-one personalized support. And it was so rewarding, me stepping out of the classroom and working with private families, but pretty much, essentially it's on that one-to-one basis, let alone being private families. So we work with schools and local authorities and it's still one-to-one. The point really is it's that personalised approach and that level of understanding, and the sense of reward is absolutely incredible. But not only you're developing that relationship with a young person, you're developing a relationship with the family and the team around that child. When it comes to local authorities that we work with speech and language therapists, OTs, ed psych. So there's a big group of individuals, and that's really exciting. Training yourself, listening to those individuals and learning those strategies, that's brilliant. Yeah. So you can support even more young people knowing what you picked up from, observing other sessions.
And probably even then being able to kind of identify things you may not have seen or spotted if you haven't had those conversations or been aware of those conversations, to then go, actually, I think you might need to speak to X person and having that networking again.
It is so much about community and just sharing ideas and sharing, just making, it's so much about community and just being on the same level with each other, and there not being any issues in terms of asking for advice and support and help. And as long as everybody is heading in the same direction in terms of truly wanting to support that family and young person, then we're doing well.
So I'm going to ask you about the two letters that is taking over the world right now. AI.
Yeah. So this time last year, I was still a bit on the fence. I attended BETT last year. We were talking about AI on a panel discussion. Even then, I was a bit on the fence, even, listening to the panelists. Here I am this time. I fundamentally believe it has a lot to give. I think we need to be careful. We do need that human interaction, but I absolutely think that if we think carefully in terms of what it's able to deliver our young people, we should be utilising some of the.
What are you seeing are the biggest barriers in terms of being able to really integrate that effectively into classroom practice, maybe even into tutoring or supporting young people who have special educational needs?
I think it's a mindset thing. I work with a few tutors who are really interested in AI, but also that their young people are really techy as well. So they love that. I mean, for example, it's actually quite interesting because based on when I was working in the NHS, I learned so much from that time there. There's something called social stories, and social stories are essentially stories that support generally autistic young people and teach them what they're going to expect in a day, for example. So it limits the anxiety, and so they can anticipate what the next steps are. So it's so easy to use AI to create those stories for them. The same stories can be used as writing prompts for children as well, like those images. But those images also can be based on the child's hobbies and their interests as writing stimuli. So just typing into ChatGPT as a really, good example, easy example, what a young person's interests are, and it will create a writing stimuli to really engage that young person. So in terms of engaging a young person and blending education and hobbies and interests, I think it's absolutely brilliant. In terms of also some of the admin stuff, I think it's really important as well, because obviously as a teacher, we need to make sure that our young people are progressing. Writing notes or even, speech to text, simple one. There are some controversial elements when it comes to, obviously, there's massively long waiting lists when it comes to diagnosis. There are claims that, not that AI can diagnose, but there are claims that it can, identify traits. Whether that's good or bad, I'm not sure. Whether that panics a family or reassures them when, a system says possibly autistic, possibly dyslexic.
Yeah.
It could be reassuring. It could mean that they're therefore looking at, different strategies, dyslexic ends or something that, they've discovered or started to research. But there still needs to be that human interaction.
Definitely. I think when you were just saying that, then it reminded me a little bit of the case of us kind of self-diagnosing and going to the doctor and saying, I have this.
Yeah.
Actually, we want to be really careful of that, it's really great people can be aware, and it's great these tools can potentially, like you say, opportunity to understand what it could be. But actually that human interaction of a specialist, if someone needs to talk and find out a little bit more and deeper dive into it, it's really, really important.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, if you've got a trait and AI decides you could be possibly X, I mean, the next step could be therefore you do your research and see what strategies could support you. I mean, that's going to be brilliant using AI.
Yeah, and I think as well, often a lot of these strategies is really helpful in general. I know a lot of the work that I do within schools around inclusion and accessibility tech is all about actually universal design. Let everyone use it, because these will help everybody, including our teachers, to go, that's a really quick and effective way for me to be able to do that, which gives me more time. And you know what, sometimes that time is just for to have a tea or coffee, just kind of relax.
Yeah.
Also, we can also do, okay, now I've got time to go, actually, do you want to really personalise that person to understand it?
Yeah.
I have 5 minutes time to do that.
I definitely think it's an opportunity. But as you and I were talking about earlier, there is so much out there now as well. It's where to start.
Yeah.
Initially, I get a few messages on LinkedIn, really exciting projects. Now I get so many messages on LinkedIn, similar thing. And, I delete the messages. Apologies to anybody that sent me those messages. But, there's nothing that's really standing out anymore. And I feel that, I don't know what your feelings are, but I feel totally overwhelmed by it. Unless somebody, it's interesting, because unless somebody comes to me and demonstrates again with that human interaction, this is what it can do, then I'll be fine. Human interaction, here's a platform. I'm not going to have human explaining it. I'm not going to be interested.
And I think you're right. I get a lot of those. And I mean, I had one the other day that it was a big scroller, put it that way. And I just thought, again, as the dyslexic person anyway, I'm looking at that going, that's way too much information. There's no context to me.
Yeah.
And I don't want to read it. I can't interact with that kind of information in that way. But you're right. I think there are so many things coming out. And we were talking earlier, my thing from it is an ethical standpoint. Yes, we can use AI. Yes, we can create things with AI really quickly.
Yeah.
Should we?
Yeah. Exactly on that point, there are platforms out there that can draft an EHCP, which is great in terms of time saving. I don't believe that AI can really truly understand a young person. There has to be that person in there that's, yes, it will draft it and, point one, great. But there has to be that person, the speech and language therapist and the team around the child that have to be involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Just for our international audiences, would you mind just expanding on the acronym for
us?
So
an EHCP is Education Healthcare Plan. These are plans that may no longer exist in the next few months, hence the anxiety around them. But they are legal binding documents. We call them gold dust families, really. They are increasingly difficult for families to receive because it allows the young person to receive funding. We'd probably say, yes, I read EHCPs all the time, but autism certainly is going to be on there. PDA is massively on the increase. That's pathological demand avoidance. The PDA Society consider PDA to be a remit or within the autism spectrum. Conversations around that. But that is something that if you do have those diagnoses, you may potentially get an EHCP, but it's still incredibly difficult. Mild dyslexia, you're not going to get an EHCP. You know, it's increasingly hard to get them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So that brings us nicely onto why are you here at BETT and what are you really looking forward to doing?
Brilliant. So this is the second time I'm here. This time last year, or a few months before the start of BETT last year, I was approached by BETT actually because there was a conversation that was happening and I was involved in that around SEND. And the question was, should we have a SEND village? And I said, absolutely, you absolutely should. And so I was one of the people that really got involved in pushing that forward. And I had a stand here and I was involved in a few panels. Same time this year, I'm on a panel discussion talking about absenteeism, which I feel very strongly about, and obviously the mental health side of things and why young people are choosing not to attend school or are unable to. And then tomorrow I am with Daniel Sobel with IFIP, which is the International Forum of Inclusive Practitioners. And I'm on a panel with 3 local authorities talking about alternative provision, which is essentially private specialist tutoring support who work for government, local authorities, sorry. And then on Friday, I am moderating another panel. And that panel is, again, something I'm incredibly passionate about, which is neuro-inclusion in the workplace and really what that looks like. So on my panel there, I've got BBC, I've got Jack from Goldman Sachs, I've got an individual who is a careers advisor for disabled young people at the university, and then I've got a person who is a former art teacher and now consultant. So yeah, it's all busy. Yes, incredibly busy.
Amazing. And so incredible to be able to have the whole SEND village. It's a really great opportunity. What is your kind of hope from here that it will have? What effect will it have?
I just think, and I just hope that BETT really recognise the opportunities they have in terms of creating a village. You know, and I actually love the word village for SEND because it is. You know, people that work in this space, myself included, you know, are all driven to make that difference that I've always wanted to do. It's all about the young people. It's all about that caring and nurturing approach. So I think, you know, the name of SEND Village comes really, really handy for the people that are here.
And they say it takes a village.
They do, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad to have had you on the pod.
Thank
you
you
to be our first guest.
Yep, indeed.
Thank you so much and have the most incredible week. Do pop by and let us know how it's all going.
Thank you.
And thank you for having you.
Thanks again.
Cheers. Bye. This episode is supported by Edruption. Edruption works with schools, trusts, governments, and education organisations to design inclusive, accessible, and sustainable digital systems, moving strategy from paper into practice in ways that genuinely work for people. From digital audits and 360 reviews to coaching for digital and AI leaders, governance frameworks, and safeguarding first implementation. Edruption helps organisations build and refine digital ecosystems that are secure, purposeful, and future-ready. Not only that, but they're Canva trainer partners too, supporting schools to embed creativity, accessibility, and consistency at scale, not as add-ons, but part of everyday life and inclusive practice. So if you're navigating AI readiness, inspection pressure, staff capability, or simply looking into bringing clarity in an increasingly complex digital landscape, Edruption is here to support that journey. Explore their work at edruption.com, empowering change and meeting you where you are.
Yeah.
The guys from Abu Dhabi.
Right.
Okay, so we are live here at BETT, day 1. Welcome to the EdTech podcast, live here, BETT partner. Phil, would you like to give us a little bit of information about who you are for our international listeners and what you do?
Hi, Philippa. Well, thank you very much for having me on the EdTech podcast. I'm quite thrilled. It's my first podcast experience. So who am I? I mean, I'm a retired Army officer, served 16 years in the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers, worked on IT programs for government, and then after COVID, found myself working in education in the data role and then as head of business intelligence, and then went back into contracting within government. And when I did that, I was left with such a profound experience of working in education and some of the challenges around data, and in particular, interventions. Now, it's twofold, really. One was from working in education and experiencing managing the data and seeing what all the great work that teachers did for students, but also from a personal experience with my own daughter, being told a couple of months before I sat that she hadn't grasped some of the key stage 1 concepts of maths. And that led me to create Tide Education.
Amazing. I think it is so incredible, the amount of founders of companies that I speak to, and it really has come from a personal experience around that wanting to do something that can help so many others in the situations that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, it's from a personal experience. I wanted to have a conversation with the school. I wanted to understand, what interventions they put in place, what worked, what hadn't. So it can be a collaboration, So Tide Education not only supports the parents, it supports teachers and schools, but ultimately it supports the child, the student.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about those conversations, and it's that joined up thinking, isn't it? So I'm lucky enough to have had a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of what Tide looks like on the inside. But would you be able to kind of give a little bit of information for our listeners around how do you kind of help to nurture and create those conversations?
So interventions are an integral part of every school. Every school does interventions. They might call it something different. They might structure them slightly different because every school's got a different cohort, a different practice, slightly different practice. The problem with interventions and data in schools is that the mechanisms for recording them are sometimes disparate. The spreadsheet might be fantastic if it's your spreadsheet. You're not always able to enter that information in a spreadsheet or a contact book, leading to information being in Post-it notes, voice memos, etc. Tide Education allows you to create one view, one timeline, and one understanding of every child's support journey. It allows schools to create their own bespoke interventions for their cohort and practice, because we recognise that every school's different, and collaborate with teams, with the other members of staff, add notes to create a rich picture of all the support they're providing, all in one place. And because we're a mobile-first company, it's right there in your pocket when you need it, every time you need it.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, isn't it? Because having come from a British curriculum background when I was working in the UK, and then moving out towards the Middle East and working across a range of different curriculum areas, but also within a Middle Eastern market where we track very different things. And oftentimes we get companies and systems which are brilliant, but there's always that kind of narrative of, if only I could just, because you were just saying there, like the ability to personalize it and to have our own interventions and our own things that we're looking for. Is that something that you've seen that has been utilised as something that you see as being a really key feature?
I do see it as a key feature. That recognition that every school is different, every cohort is different, every child is different. So to create a platform that enables a school to customise it for their needs and not just tell them what they should be using, they can decide what they need to use.
Yeah.
So they can create. So we have a category. So a classic would be attendance. Then we have a tier. But you can call it whatever you want. It could be stage, and you said in the Middle East they call it waves.
Yeah.
So you can call it waves, and then you can create your intervention type. Your action. So it could be a attendance intervention, stage 1, home visit, as an example. But equally, you could use it in an alternative provision where your categories are subjects, your stages are your terms, and your types are your learning outcomes. So it's completely customizable.
And are you finding that the gap of this kind of intervention reporting is overcomplicated systems, or is it just that systems haven't created something for people to be able to do that with, and maybe schools are overcomplicating it themselves by having lots of spreadsheets that don't communicate with the right stakeholders?
I think the market is limited to, at the moment, yes, MIS do have intervention functions, but sometimes they're on the top tier of the pricing model. You can download a Word document from the internet, and there's plenty out there where you can download, so you can write it in by hand or on a computer, or you've got a spreadsheet. Now, the spreadsheet's good, but it's only good if it's your spreadsheet, and it's never available when you need it necessarily. So if you have a conversation with a pupil at lunchtime, there might be a well-being, they might be upset. You've now got to hold that information in your head until you get a chance to find that spreadsheet, find that contact book, and write it down.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to enter it there and then, when it happens, in the moment, and create that record? And that's what Tide allows you to do.
Absolutely. I think that's really important, isn't it? We know as educators, we are so busy, often things that we want to be able to do don't get done because things come in. Something will happen at lunchtime, something will happen when we're on a duty, maybe even in a lesson time, or your child might want to stay and ask you a question, and that thing that you need to log is then lost because you've not had time, or you've misplaced it on a post-it note, and so that's really...
Absolutely, Philippa. And when I worked in education, I was the data manager of secondary school. And it was fantastic, right? The one thing that struck me about working in a school, it was non-stop. There was never a spare moment to just grab a coffee, sit down and have a chat. It was full on from the start of the term to the end of the term for 6 terms a year. And having to manipulate that data in spreadsheets, yes, it's doable, but it is time consuming.
Yeah.
So, a platform that puts it all in one place.
Yeah.
Where 5 seconds is all you need to find a student support journey.
Which is incredible. I think bringing it back to your own personal journey with your daughter, what impact would that have had on that journey and that narrative had there been a potentially a tracking mechanism in place? Because if you think about, your daughter's instance, very similar to possibly hundreds of thousands of children out there.
Well, first of all, I could have had a conversation. I could have understood as a parent, not from a judgmental perspective, but from, so what support could I put in place for my daughter? A maths tutor. Great. Well, what subjects, what topics in maths is she struggling with? That level of detail would have enabled that collaboration for me and my wife to be part of our daughter's primary education.
Yeah.
And, continue into secondary education, to be able to understand what she's struggling with.
Yeah, that's incredible. So I guess big question is where are you currently within your journey of Tide? What's your kind of 2026 looking like?
So where we are in the journey, if I was 20 years younger, I'd say I was a bootstrapping an edtech startup, but I'm not. I'm doing Tide in my spare time, at my weekends, in my days off, like today. And what I aim to achieve in 2026 is get a number of schools using the platform to get some adoption, to get some collaboration going, to understand how schools and teachers want to use the platform, to understand what works for them, to understand the flows, to see what features might they want to see. So that's what I'm hoping to achieve this year. We built the platform last year. We kind of did a bit of a soft launch. Here again at BETT, it's great.
Amazing. And you've got your QR code on the back of you, so hopefully we'll have people following you around trying to snap pictures.
Yeah. So if anyone sees me at BETT and wants to scan a QR code or just come and say hello, I'm more than happy to chat.
That's brilliant. And so walking around BETT, I mean, obviously it's the very early morning of the first day, but what sorts of things are you seeing or hearing or have you noticed?
Well, I'm going around and I'm connecting up with, my contacts in education, meeting new people, interested to see what's happening in the space of AI and how applicable and transferable that is into the classroom or into schools, mainly from a support perspective, because that's my sort of experience in education. So I'll be interested to hear a bit about that and see who's doing things around support.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's incredible. So we're sat here at the moment, and for listeners, just to my left is a SEND village, so a special education needs and disabilities village, which is brilliant because the whole notion of a village is kind of, it takes us all as a community to bring together. So, I mean, that's a huge impact. This is a new part of BETT this year. And I guess that's also links quite nicely into, the platform Tide.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Tide isn't solely for SEND. It's applicable for anything. But I think especially with the focus on SEND, the workload, I think it was even in the areas for research 2025 about interventions and knowing what works and why, for what parts of the cohort. So yeah, it's definitely got applicability in the SEND area.
And hopefully also just a lot more awareness, right, of the importance of these little conversations that have a huge impact on children's experiences.
You get the ability to capture, support every child, in every moment. So you don't have to just focus on the ones that are either one end of the scale or the other end of the scale. But you can avoid that middle, that lost data, that lost information, because it may not be that convenient to enter it.
I think one last thing that I kind of want to touch upon is the fact that the system doesn't rely on necessarily schools having an abundance of technology or connectivity and things like that, does it? It's quite simple in itself.
The application is very simple. So we're an AWS partner, but we host on AWS, and we connect to the school MAS via Wand if the school has an MAS, but equally they can, upload their student data manually.
Yeah.
And we only need a student name and an identifier. And that's all the data. That's the minimum data we need to operate. And it's a standalone platform. But equally, we are fully API enabled. In fact, it was Joshua Perry that said on a podcast recently, APIs are unusual, but they shouldn't be. And I completely agree. Because we want to put the schools back at the heart of their data.
That's such an amazing note to leave it on. Thank you so much for being with us this morning and telling us about Tide Education. I think we definitely need more people who are doing it for the right reasons. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Philippa, and thank you for having me.
That's it from us here at BETT. Thank you for joining this conversation and being part of the wider dialogue between education and technology. You'll find more BETT conversations and episodes wherever you listen to podcasts, and we'll be back very soon with more stories from the show floor.